Every morning, just before the sun stretched over the rooftops of Santa Solana, she'd step outside wearing that same faded red apron. And every morning, without fail, she'd place a warm roll into the hands of the quiet old man sitting by the recycling bins. No words, no questions, just a meal and a silence that somehow said more than conversation ever could. She never asked where he came from, never wondered aloud why his eyes held the weight of 1,000 untold stories. But on the 11th morning, the stillness shattered. Black military vehicles rolled up like clockwork. Doors opened in sync. Boots hit the ground. And a man in a blue uniform stepped forward, holding a letter with trembling authority. Inside the bakery, hearts froze mid-beat. And when the woman in the red apron walked through that door, every soul in the room rose to their feet. Welcome to Incredible and Teachable Story. Tell us where you are watching from and what time it is. Now let's uncover what happened in this incredible story. Tucked between an abandoned gas station and a dusty old pawn shop stood a little bakery that smelled like home. Not the kind of home with chandeliers or marble floors. No, the kind with creaky cabinets, hand-me-down mugs, and a warmth that lived in the air like cinnamon. This was Solana Bakes, and it belonged to Jenna Morales. She'd lived in Santa Solana her whole life, never left for more than a weekend, and truth be told, she liked it that way. She wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, didn't need the world to know her name, but she remembered birthdays others forgot. She knew which customers took their coffee black, and which ones stirred in sugar, while avoiding eye contact. She never pushed, never pried, just noticed. By 4:30 a.m., she was already kneading dough under flickering kitchen lights, shaping sourdough loaves and folding her famous honey cinnamon twists. Locals said her muffins could fix a bad mood faster than a pay raise. And though she never said out loud, Jenna believed there was healing in flour, in the way you pressed and folded, waited and hoped, the way a thing could rise after being through the heat. She didn't have many friends, didn't stay after hours. But people came to her like moths to gentle fire, drawn by the quiet steadiness of someone who expected nothing but gave everything anyway. That's why, when the old man started showing up outside her shop just before sunrise, Jenna didn't need a reason. She just noticed him, the same way she noticed everyone else who walked through life hoping not to be seen, but silently wishing someone would. It started with a shadow, barely there in the early morning haze. At exactly 6:10 a.m., he'd appear like clockwork, settling quietly on the weather-warped bench just past the recycling bins. No words, no handouts, no signs asking for help. Just a man, silver hair tangled beneath a faded cap, shoulders hunched like they'd been carrying the same invisible weight for years. His coat, threadbare and dust-covered, didn't match the desert morning chill. And yet, he never shivered, never flinched. He didn't beg, didn't look lost or confused. If anything, he looked like he was watching something or someone, careful, quiet, eyes sharp in a way that said he'd learned to expect the world to hurt before it helped. The first time Jenna saw him, she paused only for a second, her hand resting on the broom handle as she swept the back patio. They locked eyes. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, then looked away. The next morning, he was there again. Same time, same bench, same nod. 5 days passed. Then 10. 3 weeks later, he was still showing up, never moving from that bench until the sun had fully risen, never speaking, just being. Jenna never asked why. She didn't need to. One frosty Tuesday, as the windows fogged and the air bit with early cold, she stepped outside holding a brown paper bag. Inside, a leftover ham sandwich, a cinnamon muffin, and a steaming cup of coffee with a lid tucked on just right. She didn't hand it to him, just placed it gently on the bench beside him and muttered, barely loud enough to hear, "Guess the kitchen overdid it today." He looked at the bag, then at her. His eyes didn't widen, didn't soften, just studied her face like he was trying to decide, was this kindness or was this pity in disguise? And then, that same small nod, only this time it was a little deeper. The next day he came back. Same time, same bench. So did the brown paper bag. No thank yous. No greetings. Just a bag, a cup, and that same quiet exchange between two strangers who understood the value of silence. It became their ritual. Unspoken. Unchanging. Jenna never told anyone. Didn't announce it. Didn't explain. It wasn't charity. It wasn't a statement. It was just what felt right. But in small towns, people notice the things you never say. One morning, while Jenna arranged croissants in a display window, she caught a whisper from across the counter. "He's still there," someone muttered. Not loud enough to be rude, but loud enough to be heard. A younger co-worker raised an eyebrow. What is this now? Community outreach? Or do we just hand out pastries to anyone who hasn't shaved since Christmas? Jenna said nothing. She didn't flinch. She just kept slicing the warm loaves with quiet focus, like every piece she laid down was part of something sacred. Then one day, Ms. Lydia, the elderly vendor from the corner market, shuffled in with her usual drip coffee and leaned in close. "You've got your mother's heart," she whispered. Jenna froze, just for a moment. Lydia had known her mother, the woman who once gave soup to strangers and hugs that smelled like parsley and soap. Jenna didn't speak. She just nodded, like someone had finally seen her too. And then, one morning, he was gone. The bench sat empty. Still, like it had forgotten how to hold someone. Jenna blinked, standing in the doorway with a paper bag in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Still, she walked over. Still placed them down gently. Still whispered, "Too much in the kitchen again." The next day, same thing. No Elias. Just wind and silence. By the fourth morning, the ache had settled into her routine like another task. She packed the food anyway, set it on the bench, watched the steam curl up from the lid of untouched coffee. And that was the day Mr. Reyes called her in. His office was barely the size of a closet, smelled of burnt coffee grounds and old ink. He didn't waste time. "Jenna," he said, not unkindly, "I know you mean well, but customers are starting to talk." She kept her hands clasped tight in front of her apron. "He's not asking for anything," she said softly. "He's never even stepped inside." "That's not the point," Reyes replied, rubbing at his temples. "You're leaving food for someone every day, right out front. It makes people uncomfortable." She stayed silent, not because she had no words, but because as she opened her mouth, her voice might break. Reyes sighed. "Look, I'm not telling you to stop. Just be discreet. Leave it out back if you have to. Just don't make it a thing." Jenna nodded once. That night, she emptied the small tip jar by her bedside, just enough for bread, coffee, and a muffin for the week. She tucked a few bills into a plain white envelope, wrote, 5 days covered, just in case. She didn't need permission, just purpose. That night, after closing, Jenna sat alone in her small apartment above the bakery. The silence felt louder than usual, like something had gone missing and left its echo behind. She moved to her dresser and pulled open the bottom drawer, the one that never held clothes. Inside was a worn silver tin box. Clean, carefully kept, untouched by time, except for the faded edges. She opened it slowly, as if the contents might disappear if handled too fast. Inside lay her mother's old journal, leather-bound, its corners frayed from use and love. Jenna flipped to the pages with practiced fingers, stopping on the one she always returned to. The ink had faded, but the handwriting hadn't lost its warmth. "Gave half my ration today to a boy crying outside the fence," it read. "Some said I was foolish, that he could have been a trap. But his eyes, they reminded me of myself the day Papa didn't come home." Jenna's eyes softened. Then came the line that always made her pause. "No one grows poorer by sharing bread, but those who forget to share, no matter how full their tables, they stay hungry in ways they'll never understand." She traced the sentence with her finger, like it might lead her somewhere kinder, somewhere familiar. In that moment, she understood something she hadn't put into words before. This wasn't about feeding a stranger. It wasn't even about guilt or grief. It was about remembering that someone, once upon a time, had done the same for her. 10 days. The bench remained empty, untouched. like it had been waiting for someone, but given up. Jenna still brought the paper bag each morning, still poured the coffee, still whispered something soft into the wind as she set it down. But the ritual had begun to feel like memory instead of habit. Then came the post. A photo taken from across the street, clear as day. Her bakery in the background, the bench in the foreground. A lone brown paper bag sitting untouched beside a steaming cup. The caption read, "Feeding ghosts now? Guess fake charity makes better marketing than real service." She saw it by accident. A message from Ms. Lydia had pinged her phone with a quiet, "Don't let it get to you, Mija." But the comments, they were worse. Staged. Bet she throws it out right after. Feeding strays only attracts more. Jenna locked her phone without reading another word. The sting settled behind her ribs, somewhere too deep to rub away. She didn't defend herself, didn't explain, didn't try to fight rumors with logic. Instead, she went home that night, set down her keys, and quietly repacked the next day's bag. A muffin, a roll, and coffee, hot with just enough sugar. She didn't know if Elias would return. She didn't know if he'd ever see another sunrise. But she did know this. Kindness wasn't performance. It wasn't a post. It wasn't a currency to be proven. It was a choice you made, even when no one believed in it but you. On the 11th morning, the sky hung low, gray and thick, like it was holding its breath. Jenna was behind the counter, wiping down the pastry case, her apron dusted in flour, her mind already halfway into tomorrow's prep. Then came the sound. Low, slow, deliberate, tires pressing into gravel outside, heavy engines idling in unison. She looked up, for black SUVs pulled up to the curb in perfect formation, spotless, identical, each one gleaming against the gloom of the morning. The hum inside the bakery dimmed, like even the espresso machine didn't dare interrupt. One by one, the doors opened. Uniformed soldiers stepped out, 2 by 2, moving like one body, no wasted motion, no unnecessary words. And then he stepped out. From the lead vehicle came a tall man, his posture as straight as his polished boots. His face was lined by sun and time, but there was a stillness in his gaze, like someone used to being a babe but never rushed. His dress blues were pristine. Rows of metal shimmered faintly in the gray light. He walked toward the bakery. Not quickly, not slowly, like a man carrying something that could not be dropped. The bell above the door chimed. Everyone turned. The room felt suspended, like even the air had paused to listen. The man scanned the room, then spoke, his voice steady but firm. "Is there a Jenna Morales here?" Jenna straightened slowly behind the counter, hands still damp from the cloth she'd been using. "Yes," she said quietly. He approached with calm steps, reaching into his uniform. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mason Vega, United States Army Special Forces," he said. "I'm here because of a promise." Colonel Vega pulled a sealed envelope from the inside pocket of his uniform. Thick, folded with care, its edges slightly worn, as if it had been carried for miles before finding its way here. "This letter," he said, "was written by Mr. Elias Green." Jenna's breath caught. Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. "He was the father of Corporal Devin Green," the colonel continued. "One of my best men. Devin was killed in action overseas 2 months ago." The room fell even quieter, if that were possible. After his son's death, Elias disappeared. We searched for him, but he didn't want to be found. He withdrew from everything. Vega paused for a moment, his voice softening as he looked directly at Jenna. "But 3 weeks ago he wrote to me, not about his grief, not even about his son." He held the envelope a little higher. "He wrote about you." Jenna's eyes began to sting, her throat tight. In his final letter, written just days before he passed from heart failure, he asked us to find you. The colonel opened the envelope gently, unfolded the paper, and read from it. She never asked my name, never asked what I'd lost. She just left food like I mattered. Every morning, she gave me a reason to come back. Not for the bread, not even for the coffee, but because someone saw me and didn't flinch. Vega looked up again. "He said you helped him believe the world still held kindness, even for the broken." His voice cracked, just barely. He asked us to tell you that your quiet act of grace helped the father begin to heal. Colonel Vega folded the letter with the same care it had clearly been written with. Then he stepped back. His boots clicked once against the tile, and without another word, he brought his hand to his brow and rendered a formal salute. Every soldier outside, standing beneath the gray morning sky, followed suit. Through the bakery window, they stood at full attention, not for a commander, not for a mission, but for a woman in a flour-dusted apron who had offered bread to a stranger. Jenna stood frozen behind the counter. Tears welled silently in her eyes, not because she had done something grand, but because something so small had mattered this much. Word spread faster than wildfire on a desert breeze. Within 3 days, a photo of Jenna, still behind her counter, eyes glassy as soldier saluted, made his way across town and then beyond. The local paper ran the headline, "The morning ritual that helped a father heal." She didn't ask for the attention, didn't bask in it. She still opened the shop at 5:30 a.m., still wore her red apron, now a little more worn, still kneaded dough with quiet focus, as though each loaf carried something sacred. But the people changed. A young mother came in with her toddler and left a folded note at the register. "My brother's a Marine. Thank you for seeing the ones we forget." An older man with a slow gait placed a challenge coin beside the tip jar, then nodded once. "Vietnam, 74, he murmured. "First time I believed in people again. Others didn't come to buy. They came to leave. Patches, letters, medals, stories. And somehow, a loaf of bread had given them permission to tell them." A week later, tucked among the thank you notes and folded napkins that had begun to bloom along the counter like paper flowers, Jenna found one envelope that looked different. Childlike handwriting in blue ink. A few stickers along the corner. Little stars. A crooked heart. Inside was a letter. "Dear Miss Jenna." It began, "I'm Lila Green. Elias was my grandpa." Jenna sat down to read it, the room around her quiet as rising dough. "We didn't know he was gone," the letter continued, "until someone from the army called. Grandma cried for 2 days, but then she told me about you. She said there was a lady who gave Grandpa food every morning without asking why. She said he talked about you all the time, called you the woman with the kind hands." Jenna's breath caught on that line. "We cleaned out his room last weekend," Lila wrote. "Under his bed, we found a box. It was full of napkins and little notes. All the ones you left with his food. He didn't throw away a single one. Thank you for being nice to him when nobody else was. Love, Lila." Jenna didn't cry right away. She just folded the letter slowly, like it was something sacred. Then she placed it in a small frame and hung it behind the counter, not where everyone could see, just where she could. Because some reminders weren't meant for the world. They were meant for the quiet moments when doubt creeps in, and you need to remember why you started offering kindness in the first place. It was early, the kind of early where the sun hadn't quite made up its mind yet. Jenna was rolling out dough, her hands dusted in flour, when the front door creaked open. It wasn't a customer. It was Mr. Reyes. He walked in carrying a wooden sign, about the length of his forearm. Didn't say much, just nodded toward the counter with a rare half-smile. She watched him step outside, mount it carefully beneath the old bakery logo, then dust off his hands like it was just another repair on just another day. But it wasn't, because the sign read, "Bread for those who need it." No questions, no shame, no fancy font, no hashtags or footnotes. Just 7 simple words that carried the weight of something bigger. Jenna stepped outside after him and stood for a moment, reading it like it was the first poem she ever understood. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. He just gave a small shrug, the kind that meant, "We get it now." From that morning on, things shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but in quiet ways, like how the door stayed open longer, how strangers didn't feel like strangers, how silence in the shop felt full instead of empty. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Jenna thought, maybe kindness didn't just ripple outward. Maybe sometimes it circled back. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind where the air smelled like wood smoke and dry leaves, and the sky wore a soft amber glow. Jenna was wiping down the counter when the bell over the door jingled faintly. A teenage girl stood there, hoodie zipped all the way up, her hands buried in the pockets, head lower like the weight of the world had curled her shoulders forward. Jenna offered a gentle smile. "Hi there." The girl hesitated, then stepped closer to the counter. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My dad's deployed," she mumbled, eyes fixed on the floor. "My mom, she cries a lot now. We don't really talk much in the mornings. She paused, swallowed hard. "I just want to know if you still have any bread." Jenna didn't ask questions, didn't press. She simply reached behind the counter, pulled a fresh roll, still warm from the oven, and placed it gently in a small paper bag. "We've always got bread," she said softly, "and a seat by the window, coffee if you want, and someone to listen if you ever feel like talking." The girl didn't say thank you. She just nodded, that same small, silent nod Jenna had come to understand so well. She took the bag, sat quietly at the corner table, and stared out the window like maybe, just maybe, something in the world still made sense. Jenna gave her space. Let her be. When the girl eventually left, she didn't say goodbye. But a few minutes later, as Jenna swept up behind the flower bin by the back door, she found something left behind. A challenge coin, heavier than the one the veteran had given weeks ago. Its surface was smooth, edges worn from time, but the words engraved into its center were clear. Semper Fidelis, never forgotten. Jenna closed her fingers around it, pressed it gently to her heart, and whispered, "I won't." That evening, as the sun dipped low and cast a golden wash over the shop's worn floorboards, Jenna stood in the middle of the empty bakery. The ovens hummed in the background. The scent of bread lingered in the air, familiar, forgiving, and the sign outside caught the last light of day. Bread for those who need it. No questions. No shame. She didn't need applause. Didn't need headlines or hashtags. Because kindness doesn't shout. It doesn't beg to be seen. It lives in the quiet corners of the world, in the hands that offer, not for praise, but because they remember what it felt like to go unseen. Sometimes, kindness is a warm roll on a cold morning, a folded napkin with no name on it, a moment of recognition in a life full of invisibility. And sometimes, it's enough to change a life, not through grand gestures, but through the smallest acts that say, "You still matter. You are still seen." And maybe the world doesn't change all at once. Maybe it shifts, one paper bag, one steaming cup, one silent nod at a time. So if you've ever wondered whether a small act of compassion is worth it, just remember this. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just want to make sure that today, someone isn't going hungry.